The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television. Major support for Compass is provided by the ongoing support of the Leo P. Flynn Estate of Millbank, South Dakota. Additional support is provided by the Southwest Minnesota Private Industry Council, promoting Southwest Minnesota as a place rich with opportunity. Come for the jobs, stay for the lifestyle. More information at swmnpic.org.
Hello and welcome to Compass, a production of Pioneer Public Television. I'm Les Heen, your host for Compass, and this is a weekly discussion of public policy and important issues facing our viewing area. This week, we will talk about how communities and counties are addressing the issue of hunger. We'll have representatives from the Minnesota Department of Education and from the United Community Action Partnership, and we'll talk about programs that are available to help spread awareness, improve education, and make lives better for those who are faced with the problem of not knowing where the next meal will come from. First, Pioneer's Laura K. Prosser will show us about a program called Back the Pack. It's a program that spans many communities in different forms, but all with the end goal of making sure that students have enough food to eat during time outside of school. Here's Laura's report.
Many low-income families struggle to put food on the table, especially during the weekends when there's more mouths to feed and more than just dinner to cover. But there's hope. Betsy Hennon is here to tell us about the Back the Pack program out of Renville County. And Don Gartner, a substitute teacher from Bold, is here to tell us about what kind of impact area schools are seeing. Betsy, Don, welcome. Betsy, why don't you tell me about what Back the Pack program is?
Well, like you said, we're a nonprofit organization providing meals to kids on the weekends. We serve not only Renville County, but also Yellow Medicine, Candio High, Redwood, and Sibley. What we do here is we have great groups of people, volunteers that come in from different towns, and they help us pack. They usually come in on a Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon, whatever is good for them. They walk around the table, put the food in the bags, put the bags in a big box, and then they take those to the different school districts. So they're taking them either to Bird Island, Olivia, Gibbon for GFW, or Renville for RCW.
What kind of need in a community brings about a program like this?
Well, I used to be the early childhood special ed teacher at Bold, and what I would see is my kids would come in on Mondays and they would be crabby and they would be tired. And what I thought was, too much weekend, parents didn't get them to bed on time. Mm-hmm. And then as I got a little older and a little wiser, I realized they were hungry. Well, besides seeing kids when I was working at school that needed extras, I was on a tour of Egypt, and wherever we stopped during the school day, there were all these kids around begging, and we were discussing the poverty there. One lady said, "It's not only over here. We have this in our," I'm going to cry, "we have this in our own backyards." And she said, well, in Sioux Falls, they have a program where the school feeds the kids. They send home meals on the weekend. And when I got home, I was thinking about that, and I thought, if they do it in Sioux Falls, we can do it here. So I got some of my friends together and went out and raised some money, talked to the superintendent, and he said, yes, you can use our site as a distribution. The first year we just had Bold, we had 18 kids. Not many. We've been going 5 years. This year we started with 220 kids, and we're in 3 school districts and 4 sites.
So why is it important for schools to get involved with an issue like this?
What we try to do at schools is educate people. And in order to educate, you have to have kids that are on task, that they're paying attention, that they're there, they're not sick, and they need good brains. So providing food to the kids increases brain capacity, it helps them stay on task better, they're friendlier, they're not getting kicked out of class, things like that. So it's a plus for the teachers to have well-fed kids.
That's very true. And Don, you are on the front line in the classroom.
So I see the kids when they get their backpacks on a Friday, and they're so excited, and they're digging through them right away. So definitely impact, on the children.
What kind of feedback have you guys gotten from parents?
I've talked to several parents and grandparents that are very happy the program is available, for the children, because there's always times and needs that you need this kind of stuff. So
I suppose there are quite a few rural communities out there that have this need, and just seeing that somebody else can do it, just based on hearing an idea, what would you recommend for other communities? What's the first step?
Well, we have had 3 different school districts or groups that have called me because they've heard about our program, and they've come down and I've walked them through what we do, given them our forms because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. And they have gone back and started similar programs in their communities.
And I mean, I'm sure it's great when you actually have other counties and other communities coming in and going, how can I do this? Mm-hmm. How does that make you feel about your program?
One of my hopes is that we're helping families, we're helping kids to make their lives better. They'll grow up, they'll go off to school, they'll get nice jobs, they'll remember that somebody helped them when they needed it, and then they'll help others.
Thank you so much, Betsy. That's it for us in Olivia and throughout Renville County. I'm Laura K. Prosser, producer of Compass, and you go out and do something nice for somebody or start a community program. Back to Les in the studio.
And with us now to talk about regional efforts to fight hunger in our schools, we have 2 guests. First, we have with us Jenny Butcher. Jenny is a representative of the Minnesota Department of Education. And also with us, we have from the United Community Action Partnership, we have Margaret Palin. Margaret, Jenny, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
There are so many ways that we could go into this discussion, but I think it's first important to understand, there are a lot of different programs out there, and I'd like to talk about the programs that each of you do. So, Jenny, at the Minnesota Department of Education, tell us about your program and what it does to help end hunger.
The section I'm with administers all the USDA child nutrition programs. And the programs I work with are the Summer Food Service Program and the At-Risk After School Meal Program. And these 2 programs can provide meals to needy children year-round. And the Summer Food Program is a program that's more well-known in our state because it's been around longer, and the At-Risk After School Meal Program has only been around since 2010. So we're just getting the word out to let schools and community organizations know that these meals are available to feed children during the school year, and these are both out-of-school time programs.
Okay. And Margaret, your work is specific more to, southern, southwestern Minnesota, correct?
It is, yes. We have 4 food shelves within our community action, but we also work with SNAP Outreach in southwest Minnesota, so we're busy with that. And then we work with community meals and other community outreach programs in the food type stuff within the community too, so just trying to get that word out.
Yeah. So when you say get the word out, there are lots of different things that one can think about, whether it's availability of nutrition or availability of programs. When you say get the word out in the education, what does that really mean?
What we kind of work with, we work a lot with partnerships, so that alone, just working together like that, getting that spread out within the communities is really nice with that. In our outreach, we go out to the sites. We go to the community meals, we go to the food shelves, we go to the NAPS program, we go to the cooking classes that the Extension is doing in partnership with us. So we go out to the sites instead of waiting for people to come to us. We're out and about in the community a lot.
Yeah. So you talk about going out and getting out into the community, but one of the things that someone might remember is how big a problem in our communities is hunger. Are there some sort of numbers or a snapshot you can give us of the seriousness of hunger?
Yes, we can. We're finding that it's even more and more. We're really concentrating even on the senior group, because that's the group that doesn't ask, and they don't want to take anything away from the younger ones. So we assure them that there's plenty of food, but just like, say, in the Marshall area food shelf, we serve around 480 families a month on an average. So some of the smaller areas, it might be 70 families a month, or down to like 25 families a month. And we're talking smaller communities at that point.
Sure, and then also helping them understand, some of the ways that they could work their way out of poverty to help, so that they can get out of the situation they're in.
Yes, and that is our goal. Part of our mission is to give them the tools and the hope to get them out of that situation, and that's where our piece of education really comes in. We'll do classes, we'll teach them, we'll do financial classes. We want them to move past that situation so they don't have the limited resources that they started with. And life happens sometimes, so we like to get them past that.
And Jenny, in your work, of course, at the Department of Education, education is what this is all about. I know you've worked with a number of different counties and people all over the state to help people become aware that there are programs available for help.
Exactly. I'm all about outreach, and we depend on our partners to help us. The food banks, the food shelves, the United Ways across the state, the CAP agencies, and also we work with Extension and spreading the word across the state. We also have an interactive map on our website, and we have another map during the summer that's available to families to find a location near them that's hosted by Second Harvest Heartland, which is the food bank for this service area.
When you say your website, you're talking about the Minnesota Department of Education
Yes,
website.
the Minnesota Department of Education website. So in order to be on our program, a site does need to become a location that actually provides the meals, needs to be qualified, needs to be eligible, and we use this map to qualify families and I should say sites. And the sites may be eligible based on school data, where at least 50% of the children are eligible for free or reduced price meals. And any month of the school year can be used for that purpose. And then also schools and sites can qualify based on census data. And we show those areas on our map. So any site that's located in these areas can serve open meals, free meals to all children and claim them for reimbursement.
Sure. So as you look at this statewide, obviously you're dealing with rural areas and you're dealing with urban areas, and I know some of you hear the term pockets of poverty. Yes. Where you may not realize that there is one. Are you seeing that in your work? That you're seeing sort of pockets of poverty where there's more of an awareness in a particular area?
Well, I depend on those local people to make me aware of those pockets of poverty. They say that, this school is outside an eligible area. How can we qualify our school? Or this mobile home park is outside the area. Or, for instance, an example is Dawson. The food service director identified the city limits and identified the number of children in need in her community, and then was able to offer a program at a school, at a park, at the library. And we're getting more and more libraries also interested in the program, along with healthcare facilities.
And I'm sure for some people too, this becomes about, as they think about kids, the idea that a kid isn't able to learn if they're hungry, that there are huge
Absolutely.
barriers for them. So I'm sure, Margaret, you've seen those kinds of discussions in your work.
We have, just with the kids, and also you take that to the seniors in that age, even just if they're not eating the right foods, the medication doesn't work as well. So when they tell me they're starting to cut back on their medication because they can't afford, we definitely have a little sit down in my office and just show them the senior programs that are out there.
Sure, and I expect one of the things that comes up probably for both of you is that you are dealing in some cases with people who have never had to deal with hunger before, or they've lost a job, and so there's a process that I expect people have to go through to really understand what situation they're in and what help there's available.
Yes, yeah. There's, a lot of the programs are income, eligible, so we go through with that, explaining, especially with the SNAP outreach, which is the Supplementary Nutrition Assistance Program, the old food stamp. Yeah, so that's the. Sure. But to go through that and let them know that they've already paid their federal taxes for the years when they were working and they've lost their jobs. So there is a time frame in there that they can get that little lift. An average family is on SNAP for 9 months. It's not like it's a lifetime, and the average is 9 months. But just show them, sit down with them, explaining that they've already paid for this through their taxes so that they are eligible for this, and it gives them that lift to get them through that situation until they're back working or a medical issue.
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned SNAP, it reminds me, Jenny, that when we were looking at some maps earlier, you had talked about the fact that there is a connection between the state programs, the federal programs, and as you work with the maps, you're able to see that whole landscape, that a lot of these programs do sort of work together.
Exactly. And, what Margaret's been alluding to is sometimes there's families, there's a lot of pride. Seniors have a lot of pride. Regular families have a lot of pride, and children don't want to be faced with a stigma at school. So by having an open site, not qualifying the children, we're able to feed all the children and not show who is actually in need in those communities. And it works best when we can also tie it in with activity, because during the summer, we have a greater incidence of obesity, and we're trying to fight childhood obesity at the same time. Mm-hmm. So we're also always trying to connect with other organizations that might offer activities like the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club and community organizations that offer park and rec programs.
Sure, just in the same way that as you talk about produce or healthy thing, we've heard a lot of attention to the issue of food deserts.
Yes.
Where people are not able to access the produce, they're not able to access the healthy things, or they're not able to access the affordable things. Mm-hmm. So,
when you talk about innovation, food pharmacies are becoming more popular in the hospitals. Schools are having food pantries where there's more and more mobile food trucks for the summer program, mobile farmers markets across the state for the people who have gardens, and we could use more.
When you say we can use more programs,
more mobile vehicles to reach the families where they are at, because especially in greater Minnesota, it's very difficult for families to travel to a grocery store to get that fresh food and food that's affordable for them.
And I suppose, Margaret, in your work with the food shelves that you have throughout the region, you may have a situation of people not necessarily being able to get to the food shelf, right?
We very fortunate just where we're at, but there's a lot of desert areas with that. We go all the way down to here in Lake Okabena, Westbrook, Tracy, Marshall. So we're very fortunate in that, but there's a lot of little pockets. And even in the city of Marshall, it's considered there's a food desert on the opposite side of town where there isn't, grocery store. But
so as people look at these hunger issues, whether it's statewide or whether it's regional, what's happening? Are we seeing some of these issues getting worse? Do you think they're getting better? What do you think? Margaret?
I think better, because we're really working hard at it.
Sure.
We're even, with Farmers Market, as you were talking with Jenny, now in Southwest Minnesota. I could tell I'm probably a little excited, but through the extension, we've been working through a grant, but we were able to open up like 4 markets so we can take their SNAP benefits and use them at the farmers markets. And then with Hunger Solutions administrating through some state dollars, we were able to do matching bucks. So if you came with your card and swiped it for 10, there was $10 matching bucks up to 10. So the success part, we did over even like $5,000 at a couple different markets just with that program. But the success to us is that we were teaching them to come back week after week, spending 10, getting 10, and even spending more, because they went back to probably what we all grew up doing, is raising our vegetables, canning them, freezing them. They were so excited that they could afford to do that. I was so happy for them. That was success.
You could help them to get to the point where they were in a much better place.
Much better place, and they were come smiling, and it was happy. So,
in the same thing with schools, a lot of schools have gardens now, and they need people to step up and actually garden at those locations during the summer. And then they can probably, use those foods to feed their families. And some of the schools are using that produce actually in their school meals then when fall happens, because when the school gardens start, that's like the end of the school year. And then what happens over the summer, so they're looking for community members to help them with gardening over the summer.
So as you work with families and with communities, we know that you often will find people who are going to a food shelf for the first time or getting help for the first time. What about the people who are close to them? Are there sort of signs that people should look for to say, oh, I think these people need help, and how do How do we help to get them the help that they need to overcome the stigma? Is there a process to that?
Often when we do presentations, whether it's at the colleges or uptown at the senior sites, we're out doing outreach all the time with that. We just say, and so that they don't just kind of listen like, oh, I hope she's not looking at me, need help. But say, who do you know? Do you have a neighbor? Is your grandma? How's your kids doing and stuff? Who do you know that you think could use a little bit of lift at this time in their lives? And then we hand out the materials and everybody takes it and they take it home and then they can either not use it or give it to a neighbor or a friend, but who do you know that, so you kind of put it on the third person. Who do you know that we could help?
Sure, okay. Yeah. And as we get to the last minute or so of the program, I'd like to touch on some ways that people can find out more information if they want to know more about hunger or services. And Jenny, I believe you'd mentioned the Minnesota Department of Education website, simply doing a search on that and then looking within that for nutrition programs?
Yes, and if they want to find a location during the summer, they can call the 211 hotline, and they have a list of all the sites. Our web page also has a list of all the open sites, and then Second Harvest Heartland has a texting service and a map that they show all the sites and the days of the week that they operate in the meal services.
With ours, we also use Second Harvest, which is great. Our United Way of Southwest Minnesota has a site that they're very, very good to us, and so even just their site or our website as well. And then our schools actually have been very generous that have let us put flyers in all the packets and the kids, so just getting that out. But just looking on the websites of any of them, even with SHIP.
Look for United Community Action Partnership,
yes. Yes.
And we'll have it. Okay,
yes.
Great. Margaret, Jenny, thank you so much for joining us today on Compass.
Thank you.
And that's it for this week on the topic of hunger initiatives in rural areas. Our Compass producer, Laura K. Prosser, will take it from here and end this week's episode with the next installment of the Compass Literature Corner. Thanks for watching.
As part of the new segment to the show called the Compass Literature Corner, we will be talking to local authors and writers who have had an impact on this region, or whom this region has had an impact on. Today we have a man who is a writer in residence at Augustana College and a man of short stories. His latest book was a finalist for the High Plains Book Award and shares the many stories of the many faces that make up Minnesota. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to say that today's guest is Sioux Falls resident Patrick Hicks. Patrick, welcome.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to be on the show. Thanks for asking me.
Of course. Now, Patrick, tell me a little bit about your book, The Collector of Names.
Right. Well, it represents over 10 years of work. Really, it was my learning the trade craft of how to write shorter narrative fiction, because I figured if I could figure out how to really nail down how to do a short story, I could get the longer throw of how to do a novel. And I'm a novelist now, but without cutting my teeth on these stories that took me about 10 years to write, there's no way I could write the long narratives that I'm used to doing now.
The degree of these stories vary greatly. So what made you pick to do a collection?
I set out to really challenge myself. So I could write from the perspective of a male narrator very, very easily, but I wanted to expand my scope and my tradecraft, really. So a number of these short stories take place, in the mind of a female protagonist. Mm-hmm. And there are a couple of occasions where one story in particular called Burn Unit, it's set in a burn unit because I realized I'd never read a short story that's set in a burn unit. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, that could be interesting. So I did some research. I actually went to the burn unit in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I was able to shadow a nurse around for a day. And then I went to talk to the fire chief in Sioux Falls, and the story just organically came from that.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, a lot of your stories come from the perspective you wouldn't expect, like a county coroner or, a stay-at-home mom that you think, how exciting is their lives? But clearly what you create for them is exciting. So how did you think by varying the perspectives, how your audience would react?
So one of the things that I really set out to do was to show that although there might be lives that look maybe uninspiring and perhaps even uninteresting from the outside, I don't believe that's the case for any of us.
Well, and as a reader, I sat there going, and then what happened next? So you get engrossed in these lives, and it has that common theme of leaving you wanting more. Was that intentional on your part?
Yes, it was, because I think that the short stories are not just short narratives. They have a particular way of needing to be written. So what I mean by that is a novel is usually about a community of people that are involved in something. We think of Dickens or Twain or anyone that's been a very successful novelist. It's always a community, and we get a variety of souls and lives that are intertwined. Short stories aren't like that at all. Short stories focus on one life in a very brief flash of time. So this is one reason why so many of my stories sort of end with the reader maybe wanting more. I understand why you said that, but I think I've left enough breadcrumbs in the story that the reader knows what's going to happen next, but I trust them to figure it out on their own.
Or imagine what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So each story, was there a theme that it had to have in order to be a part of this collection?
No, and actually one of the challenges of putting all of these stories in this collection was I realized, because I was trying to write stories that were of interest to me, and what was happening in the world at that point in time too. Before we started recording, we were talking about how some of the stories deal with veterans.
A lot of veteran stories.
A lot, yeah. Because I was writing at least 3 of these stories while we were in the midst of the Iraq War, and some of the students that I had at Augustana University, then Augustana College, they were coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and I wanted to write about their story because it didn't seem that we as a nation were really listening to what they had to say.
I think by doing that, you gave it a sense of rawness. Was that intentional on your end? And how, if at all, did you pull that off to give a realistic feel to your stories?
I believe that all stories have to have what I'd refer to as a moment of crisis. That is, that there's something that happens in the story to the character that you care about as a reader, and the writer's job is to focus on that moment of crisis in a single life. So the rawness that you're talking about is me just focusing the lens of the reader's imagination on a particular point in that character's life. And sometimes the stories that inspired me, like the very first story in this collection, 57 Gatwick, is inspired by Pan Am 103 blowing up over Lockerbie, Scotland. So the rawness that's in my particular short story, which is set here in Minnesota, is based on actual fact that happened in Scotland, and I just changed the setting.
Wonderful. Well, if you want to pick up Patrick Hicks' book, a bunch of collections of stories, as it says, The Collector of Names, where can we find it?
Wherever good books are sold, or online.
Or online,
yeah.
Perfect. So that's it for us in the Literature Corner. Please tune in next week for more people, places, and issues facing our viewing area. I'm Pioneer's Laura K. Prosser, and may your compass always point you in the direction of a good book.
Major support for Compass is provided by the ongoing support of the Leo P. Flynn Estate of Millbank, South Dakota. Additional support is provided by the Southwest Minnesota Private Industry Council, promoting Southwest Minnesota as a place rich with opportunity. Come for the jobs, stay for the lifestyle. More information at swmnpic.org.